In the grand salons of 19th-century Europe, portrait painters discovered something revolutionary. Fabric could be just as expressive as the human face. What began as mere decoration evolved into an art form where every fold, shimmer, and texture told a story about both the sitter and the painter's virtuosity. The transformation started with artists like Franz Xaver Winterhalter, who painted Empress Eugénie and her ladies-in-waiting in 1855. Their crinoline dresses measuring over 20 feet wide, creating a sea of fabric that dominated the canvas. These weren't just portraits of people, they were celebrations of textile, where silk and velvet became the true subjects. Winterhalter understood that in an age of industrial revolution and social mobility, clothing communicated power, wealth, and identity more clearly than any facial expression could. But it was John Singer Sargent who elevated fabric painting to pure artistry. His portraits weren't simply records of what appeared before him. They were carefully orchestrated performances where he controlled every detail. Sargent often rejected his clients' clothing choices, wrapping them instead in bolts of fabric from his studio, pinning and draping until the composition satisfied his vision. Those pins often pricked his sitters, but the discomfort was worth it for the final result. He used thick paint without medium, applying color directly to canvas in broad, sensuous strokes that captured the sheen of satin, the plush texture of velvet, and the delicate translucence of organza. His portrait of Mrs. Hugh Hammersley in a fuchsia velvet gown demonstrates this mastery perfectly. Critics called the color audacious and a crying tint of rose, but Sargent rendered every nuance of the fabric's lush sheen with such precision that viewers could almost feel its weight. When painting Lady Agnew in white organza, he employed a rainbow of delicate pinks and blues in the shadows, using advances in color theory to make the fabric appear to float ethereally around her recovering form. Sargent's obsession with white fabric became legendary. He repeatedly wrapped friends and family in the same cashmere shawl and wide taffeta skirt, using them as vehicles for bravura brushwork. In his later works, freed from commissioned portraiture's constraints, his treatment of fabric became so loose that critics described it as liquefaction of clothes, the paint strokes so wild that fabric seemingly transformed into landscape. This artistic approach reflected deeper cultural shifts. Following the French Revolution, clothing became an expression of individual identity. Rather than purely social status, portrait painters responded by treating garments with unprecedented attention. They understood that a tightly laced corset, visible beneath a walking dress, or the choice between a Worth gown and simple white muslin revealed as much about a woman's values and circumstances as her facial features. The technical challenge was immense. Painters developed sophisticated methods to capture different textiles, the way light caught metallic threads in lace collars, how beetle wing cases sewn onto Ellen Terry's Lady Macbeth costume created shifting serpentine colors, or the precise gathers that marked a skillfully made garment. Every brushstroke required understanding not just paint, but the physical properties of silk, velvet, taffeta, and lace. By the century's end, these artists had proven that clothing on canvas could transcend mere representation. Fabric became a language of its own, speaking of beauty, identity, technical mastery,